June 30th, 1971. The Kazakh steppe lies quiet as a Soviet spacecraft completes what appears to be a flawless landing. Recovery teams sprint toward the capsule, already celebrating what should have been a triumphant conclusion to humanity's longest space mission yet. But when they pry open the hatch, their cheers die in their throats. 3 cosmonauts sit motionless in their seats, their bodies already cooling. No explosion marks the exterior. No collision scarred the descent. Just 3 dead men in a ship that performed every technical maneuver perfectly. This is the haunting paradox of Soyuz 11, a mission that succeeded brilliantly by every metric except the most important one, bringing its crew home alive. What transformed this routine return into a death trap? How could a valve no larger than a coin evade detection by the Soviet Union's top aerospace engineers? And why did experienced cosmonauts plead with mission control to abandon their space station weeks earlier, only to be ordered to stay? The full story contains enough twists, oversights, and chilling near misses to fill a thriller novel. From a last-minute crew change that accidentally saved 3 lives while dooming 3 others, to a commander's desperate warnings that went unheeded, to the final horrifying moments when a simple mechanical failure turned to catastrophe. This isn't just another space tragedy. It's a case study in how multiple small failures can cascade into disaster, and how even the most advanced technology can be undone by the simplest oversights. The full truth remained buried for years beneath layers of Soviet secrecy and propaganda. Now we're finally able to piece together what really happened aboard that doomed spacecraft. The intense rivalry between the United States and Soviet Union during the mid-20th century found perhaps its purest expression in the competition to dominate space exploration. Following the Soviet Union's shocking success with Sputnik in 1957, both superpowers poured enormous resources into their space programs, with national prestige hanging in the balance. Astronauts and cosmonauts became the new heroes of the Cold War era, their achievements celebrated as proof of their nation's technological superiority. The Soviets maintained an early lead in this high-stakes competition. After Sputnik came Yuri Gagarin's historic 1961 orbital flight, another embarrassing first for the Americans. But these accomplishments came at tremendous risk. The space programs of both nations suffered devastating losses as they pushed the boundaries of what was technologically possible. In 1967 alone, America's Apollo 1 crew perished in a horrific launchpad fire, while Soviet cosmonaut Vladimir Komarov was killed when his Soyuz 1 spacecraft crashed during re-entry due to parachute failure. Undeterred by these tragedies, both nations pressed forward. The Americans achieved a major milestone with Apollo 7's successful Earth orbit tests in 1968, paving the way for the moon landing the following year. Not to be outdone, the Soviets shifted focus to developing the world's first space station. Soyuz 1 launched successfully in 1971, marking a new chapter in space exploration. However, the program immediately encountered problems when the station's primary telescope failed to deploy properly, significantly limiting its scientific capabilities. Initial attempts to occupy Soyuz 1 got off to a rocky start. The Soyuz 10 mission, intended to be the first crew to board the new space station, ended in failure when the spacecraft couldn't achieve a proper docking. This setback put enormous pressure on the upcoming Soyuz 11 mission to succeed where its predecessor had failed. Preparations were already well underway when fate intervened in the most unexpected way. Just 4 days before the scheduled launch, routine medical exams revealed potential tuberculosis in cosmonaut Valery Kubasov. Following strict protocols, the entire prime crew was grounded. Later analysis would show Kubasov merely suffered from a minor allergic reaction, but by then, the decision had been made. The backup crew, Georgy Dobrovolsky, Vladislav Volkov, and Viktor Petsayev, suddenly found themselves thrust into the spotlight, with minimal time to prepare for what would become the most demanding space mission yet attempted. The cramped conditions of the Soyuz spacecraft meant the new crew would have to fly without their bulky pressure suits, a calculated risk that would prove catastrophic. On June 6, 1971, the substitute crew launched successfully from the Baikonur Cosmodrome. The following day, they achieved what Soyuz 10 could not, a flawless docking with Salyut 1. For the next 22 days, the three cosmonauts would make history as the first humans to live and work aboard a space station, setting endurance records that would stand for years. The cosmonauts' daily routine aboard Salyut 1 combined groundbreaking science with constant danger. Petsayev made history as the first person to operate an astronomical telescope in the vacuum of space. The crew conducted experiments ranging from biological studies of plants and tadpoles to detailed meteorological observations of Earth. Much of their work was broadcast to the Soviet public in carefully curated television segments that projected an image of flawless success. Behind the scenes, the reality was far more complicated. The grueling work schedule, which required one cosmonaut to remain awake at all times, created enormous strain. Personality clashes emerged, particularly between veteran cosmonaut Volkov and the two rookies. The crew had received only days' notice before their mission, leaving little time to mentally prepare for what would become the longest spaceflight in history at that time. Then, on June 16th, disaster nearly struck when the crew detected the unmistakable odor of smoke. They quickly located an electrical fire and extinguished it following procedures radioed from mission control. The incident left the crew shaken. They requested permission to terminate the mission early, but ground controllers, perhaps overly concerned about the propaganda implications, insisted the station was safe and ordered them to continue their work. On June 29th, after completing their record-breaking stay, the crew prepared to return to Earth. The undocking procedure went smoothly, and Soyuz 11 began its descent. At an altitude of 168 kilometers, the spacecraft's orbital module separated as planned. Then tragedy struck. An improperly tested pressure equalization valve burst open during the separation. In the vacuum of space, the spacecraft's atmosphere vented into space in less than a minute. Without pressure suits, the cosmonauts had no protection. Petsayev's body was later found near the valve, suggesting he'd attempted to close it manually, a process that would have taken at least 60 seconds. They had perhaps 30 seconds of consciousness. The automated systems continued working perfectly. The parachutes deployed on schedule. The capsule made what appeared from the outside to be a textbook landing. When recovery teams opened the hatch, they found all three cosmonauts dead in their seats, their faces darkened by hemorrhages from sudden decompression. The mission's final medical report was devastating in its simplicity. 111, the code indicating all crew members were deceased. The Soviet Union initially concealed the true cause of the tragedy, focusing public attention on the mission's scientific achievements rather than its catastrophic conclusion. It would be nearly 2 years before the full story of the faulty valve emerged. Subsequent investigations revealed that the original prime crew commander, Alexei Leonov, had specifically warned about relying on the automated valve system and recommended manual closure, advice that might have saved lives had it reached the replacement crew. The Soyuz 11 disaster forced a complete redesign of the Soviet space program. Future crews would wear pressure suits during launch and re-entry, a practice that continues to this day. The tragedy also marked a turning point in the space race, with both superpowers beginning to recognize that some risks were too great to take, even in the name of national prestige. 3 men died not in a fiery explosion or dramatic accident, but in perfect silence, in a spacecraft that performed exactly as designed, except for one critical flaw. Their sacrifice ultimately made spaceflight safer for those who followed, but at a cost that still resonates decades later. The story of Soyuz 11 serves as a sobering reminder that in the harsh environment of space, even the smallest oversight can have the most tragic consequences. For more untold stories from history's darkest chapters, subscribe to Rootvolutionary. We bring the past to light so its lessons won't be forgotten.